Hello, it is Ryan, and we could all use an extra bright spot in our day, couldn't we? Just to make up for things like sitting in traffic, doing the dishes, counting your steps, you know, all the mundane stuff. That is why I'm such a big fan of Chumba Casino. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere with daily bonuses. That should brighten your day a little. Actually, a lot. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com. That's ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
This is Holly Fry from Stuff You Missed in History class. Toyota is a leader when it comes to electrified vehicles. Today, battery EVs make up less than 10% of new vehicles sold because of higher cost and concerns about range and charging. Enter Beyond Zero, Toyota's vision for a carbon-neutral future. With an electrified, diversified lineup of hybrids, plug-in hybrids, and battery EVs, Toyota empowers you to choose how to reduce your own carbon footprint. Learn more and get details at toyota.com/beyondzero. Toyota, let's go places.
You're listening to 100 Words or Less with Ray Harkins.
What is happening, my podcast people? How are you doing today? I'm doing good. Just obviously a little raspy voice in case you have missed it. Got a little vocal nodules on my cords, my vocal cords as it were, but the doctor says it's nothing to be concerned about. My voice is just changing a little bit and he doesn't recommend surgery. But anyways, that's neither here nor there. What I am here to tell you about is this awesome episode today with Keith Buckley from Many Eyes. If you are a fan of Keith Buckley, you know his name. You know what band he's been in. He obviously played in Every Time I Die. And the new project he has called Many Eyes. It's going on tour with Thursday rival schools. They are hitting the road, I think, starting later this month and then all through February. And I know that all the songs that they've put out thus far are really, really flipping good. And I highly suggest that you check them out if you have not. And Keith and I get into it because we have a history. We toured together back in the day. And Keith is just a very thoughtful and intelligent individual. And I loved being able to pick his brain about, being raised within the Buffalo hardcore scene and just kind of, being able to understand all of the intricacies that his life has thrown him. And it's a great chat. So that's what we got. But I want to tell you about the ways you can reach out to the show. 100wordspodcast@gmail.com. Obviously, accept any and all inquiries, pieces of information you want to share, whatever it is. Always down for that. And if you would not mind leaving a rating and or review on the Apple Podcast page, that helps out tremendously. Same thing can be said about Spotify. Just leave a rating on there. All of those things help out tremendously. There's a reason why all of the podcasts in the world ask you to do that. And I just want this show to be discovered by people who should be listening to it. Because, if you care about independent music, it's maybe not the easiest thing to find. So, when you hear from friends or you hear from algorithms shooting in your direction, you're going to check it out. And continuing on in the weekly tradition of the 2024 recommendations, I'm going to leave a link in the show notes to all of these collected musical musings I am recommending on a week-to-week basis because, we all like new stuff to check out. And the thing that I'm recommending this week is the new Fuming Mouth record called Last Day of Sun. Fuming Mouth. I mean, obviously, for anybody paying attention to independent music, know that Mark has had, gone through a battle of cancer and he's emerged on the other side and, still some repercussions as far as that's concerned. But the Fuming Mouth record is so damn good. Came out of Nuclear Blast late last year. I want to say October, November. So it didn't have enough time to seep in and make my year end of, all the lists that we do put together. But that doesn't mean that the record is not good. It is worth your time. I freaking love it. If you like anything metal and or hardcore adjacent, you will love this Fuming Mouth record. So again, I put a link in the show notes every week. You can check out a compilation of all the things that I'm recommending. So please do that. Now let's talk to Keith and him talking about Many Eyes and just his whole life in general. So here is Keith.
I am the weapon in your righteous hand. I did not come to suffer, but I have mastered the art. So I keep a bullet in the back of my heart.
my first memory of you and Every Time I Die in general was, I remember Chris Logan from Goodfellow Records sent me the Burial Plot Bidding War, but this was the limited edition that you guys did with like the, photo on the cover. Yeah, like it was like
rare. Yeah.
Oh, dude, for sure. I still have it because I'm that much of a nerd. But
that's great.
Yeah, I was really captured by not only what you guys were putting out there, but just the fact that it was like, for lack of a better term, like an intelligent version of what metalcore was doing. Like you're just like, yeah, you're thinking man's hardcore, so to speak.
Yeah.
And I know that, obviously a lot of the origin stories of, you guys starting in Buffalo and everything like that, but I never really saw or heard articulated like who you guys were basically trying to rip off at the beginning. Like who you were like, here's our building blocks of what it is that we're going to do a poor job, ripping off, but then it will sound like what we do, So where did that, I guess that's a hacky question as far as like, where's the inspiration? But like, every band starts there.
Yeah. I personally really wanted to sound like a band called Dead Guy. Yes. They were, as far as I was concerned, like Simon, who sang for that band, his lyrics were just so sarcastic and cynical. And he just had these, he was playing with words well. And I was like, this guy he's smart and he's funny. And I feel like he has personality. And a lot of the vocalists back then, I think, had a lot of personality, but his really stuck out to me. So I wanted the band to sound like that. And I vaguely remember everyone else kind of agreeing and also putting in Converge and Coalesce into the melting pot there. But I remember not being a fan of Converge. Like I was just like, I'm sorry, I don't get Converge. And then, everyone's like, it's an acquired taste. Like you just got to listen to it more. And I'm like, why would I listen to something more if I don't like it? Like, it doesn't make sense to me. And, they're like, no, just trust us. Just listen to it more. And I did. And they're still one of my favorite bands. They were spot on with that. So, it was a lot of that kind of noisy, discordant stuff that we just wanted to copy because it felt like it was like a plausible deniability. Like it was okay to put riffs together that didn't naturally go together, and it was okay to have one thing play 4 times and another thing play 3 times because you forgot that it played 4 times the first time. And it was like, oh, we meant to do that. We meant to do that. This is noisecore. We were trying to throw you off. And it was anti-music, and I got that. I mean, I loved it. I loved the idea of it. It was very counterculture to me, and but there was just a part of me that I was dying for some like. There has to be a personality to this, there has to be some sort of humor or there has to be some intelligence because I want to stick out, and that's just kind of how it started.
Yeah. And not to be too pedantic about this, but you said Dead Guy, but I imagine you were mentioning Drowning Man.
Oh, I'm sorry. Drowning. Well, so, yes. Okay. So yeah, sorry. Drowning Man.
And Dead Guy.
Yeah. Drowning, but also Dead Guy. Yes. Yeah. Sorry. So yeah, Drowning Man was Simon. Yes. I think they were from Burlington, Vermont, or something very strange.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I think that that definitely I could see the not the influence of like there's the witty song titles or whatever, but like your point is completely lands on me, and I know many people who gravitated towards your music because it was this. For lack of a better term, there was a lot of self-seriousness about like, being dark and overly aggressive. Yeah. And like, it wasn't like people leaned away from it because, I mean, clearly your band did that as well. But like you said, there was more beyond just kind of this, artifice that you were putting out there.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, it got to a point eventually where it was like, okay, I feel like maybe this is good. It's kind of become too funny and people aren't taking us seriously enough, maybe it was too much thought and too little feeling. But I think going back and forth with that was probably like the through line of the entire career. It was just like, are we being taken too seriously, or are we being not taken seriously enough? And oscillating back and forth was kind of how we just kept moving forward for me, as far as I was concerned, of like, I have so much to say, but if I say it, are people going to realize that I'm being serious, or they think I'm being sarcastic? I kind of painted myself into a corner, and it was one of those things where it's like, no, I'm really in pain here, and everyone's just like, oh, wow, that's really cool, man. You're like, cool lyrics. It's like, no, I'm begging for help. Please listen to me. Like, and it was like, oh, totally. Man, that's really funny. And they're like, no, seriously, I have a problem, And so,
right, it's like it became the boy who cried wolf, where it's like, no, I literally could not be more literal in what I am asking right here.
Right. But, yeah, I remember like there's a lyric where I said, this is all very literal, like, and I still couldn't get people to take me seriously, and I was like, all right, I kind of fucked myself here.
Totally, the proverbial jumping the shark, so to speak.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'll pull in a few of those threads a little bit later, but just kind of like laying the groundwork of the biographical information. I know, like, born and raised in Buffalo. Yeah. Obviously, your home life of your brother and your sister in the house. Did you have any other siblings, or was that it?
No, that was it.
Okay. Yeah. And mom and dad in the house, I know you're like pretty sort of quote unquote standard suburban living.
Suburban life. Yep.
Yeah. Was Buffalo, because I mean, that is a weird ass town, obviously. And did you feel it like being, I guess, I mean, every kid feels their town being oppressive at some point in their lives, but did you feel that, I guess, weight of Buffalo on you, or no?
I mean, I like to pretend that I did, because it just made for a better storyline. But I mean, I was still so young that coming up, I was, it was a fucking playground for us. I mean, honestly, the city was so run down that there wasn't anything we couldn't do. There was no bar we couldn't sneak into. There was no building we couldn't break into. I mean, it wasn't an awful place to be until I left. And then I came back and I was like, oh, whoa, this is not how, like, what normal cities are like. Like, there's art out there. There's culture out there. There's more than sports out there, But you grow up here, and especially my age, I was born in 1979. So the most influential years of my life, the most vulnerable as far as like intellectually years of my life go, I just remember everyone being depressed and drunk because the Bills had lost 4 Super Bowls in a row, and that's like when I'm supposed to be like blossoming and finding out who I am, and the whole city is just under this dark cloud of loss, and our psyche was broken as a whole city, and I don't think that's something we ever recovered from. But it was very, very. I just remember it just being like just completely deflating for me, being like 13, 14, 15, and just seeing like, men crying that you looked up to, and you're like, what is going on in this world? Like, this doesn't matter outside of Buffalo, but everyone here, this is all everyone is doing. And so it became a very strange dance to like keep touring, leaving and coming home. And, the compare and contrast thing was, the more I did that, the more I felt the oppression of the city, for sure.
Yeah, no, and I like that. Like, I mean, your perspective gets widened, as you mentioned, the more you get out there and travel. And even if it's just, going to Syracuse and like the 2-hour difference of being like, why is this so different than where I'm from?
Right. Exactly. There was just so much. I couldn't believe it. And another thing too that was really strange was, us just being right on the border of Canada. We were influenced by a lot of Canadian music and Canadian movies and things like that, and you just assume everyone else sees and hears these things, but then you go to Ohio and nobody's ever heard of the Tragically Hip, and you're like, the Tragically Hip is that's just an example, but that's the band that you hear on the radio all the time, and they're huge in Buffalo, and they could sell out the baseball stadium, but nobody, you go an hour south and nobody's even heard of them. You're like, how does that work? I don't understand how that works. What stops the spread of music, of like intellectual property, as if there's like a fucking border wall there. I just didn't understand it, but I still really don't.
No, I don't think, especially, I mean, now in this digital day and age where it's like the world is flattened and everybody, doesn't matter where you live, like people can be creative and, pull stuff from anywhere. Right. But to your point of just that regional nature that existed where it's like, you could be like, yo, have you heard Left 4 Dead? Or
exactly. So I can't say that, and that's the thing. I had to kind of just drop it from my vernacular. I couldn't say like, yeah, I really loved New Day Rising growing up. They were a huge influence on me. Nobody knows who New Day Rising is. Nobody's going to know who Grade is. But they were awesome, I mean, and they were hugely influential on me. But I'm like, well, everyone knows Snapcase, so I say Snapcase, because it's a common language.
Totally. And it is, I love, Buffalo was so interesting from that fact because it was so easy for bands to, sneak across the border, play shows in Buffalo and vice versa, where it's like, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I read something where your first show was in Hamilton.
Yes,
which is
very first show. Yep.
That's hilarious. I mean, and first of all, most people obviously have no idea that Hamilton. But I presume, did you play the Pine Room? Is that where you played?
No,
your first
but
show,
we did play the Pine Room eventually. We actually played. It was called the Sonic Onion, and it was a CD store.
Oh,
yes. We played upstairs. Yeah.
Yeah, dude. I love. Yeah, big shout out to Chris Logan for putting on those shows.
Shout out to Chris Logan. Yes, absolutely.
But yeah, I love that idea of what you're talking about, where having all of these undiscovered gems where you're just like, listen, I can't drop this because people are going to have no clue of what I'm talking about. And I just look like I'm trying to purposefully bring these things up to stump people.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And I didn't want to be that guy. It's like, well, I was listening to New Day Rising's demo and they did the split with whatever. It's like, Oh, wait. So Hourglass. I lived with I lived with the singer of Hourglass, like in Hourglass prime, when New Day Rising kind of decided that they were going to try to be Hourglass, so they put out this record called Memoirs of Cynicism, I think was the record.
Of course.
And and I was just watching this band that I loved in Canada try to mimic the stylings of this guy that I was living with who hated his own band and didn't care about hardcore. And I don't know if you remember too much about Hourglass, but they couldn't have been any more indifferent. They were like the cool kids before there were cool kids, So it was just so fucking strange to me to be in the middle of that and know that it was like an American and Canadian thing and they could do this back and forth because it wouldn't affect each other, even though it was literally like a 20-minute drive from one show at the Pine Room to, the VFW hall downtown.
Right. No, that it's so funny you said that about Hourglass because it definitely, not only is it a deep cut, but there were so many bands of that era too that I just incorrectly thought were from they're from Santa Barbara, the ebullition scene and stuff like that. But Hourglass was never a part of that.
No.
Neither was New Day Rising on Eulogy Records. But I remember, to your point of just they were one of the earlier bands that I heard where it's oh, you can sing and scream, and this is all coming from Southern Ontario?
Yes.
And great? This is so wild.
Yes. Yeah, it was insane. I swear that Chris Gray, when I heard New Day Rising, that's exactly what I thought. I was like, oh my God, this dude is screaming and singing. And he's almost there's parts where he's almost rapping. It's he's just talking so fast that he's almost rapping. I'm this dude could do it all. And then, I love that band so much. But,
I love that.
Who do you talk to about that? I mean, I've been waiting to talk to you about this for a long time. I got some hot takes. I got some takes.
Oh man, hey man, we could just do our own separate podcast about Southern Ontario.
We should. Dave Bushmeyer. Shout out to Dave Bushmeyer. I hope all those guys are well. I mean, I haven't seen any of them in a very long time, but they were such an influential part of my childhood.
Yeah, no, I love that. And speaking of that, I know that you had music in your house as far as your self-described parents were, hippies and obviously playing music.
Yeah.
And, I appreciate the James Taylor shout out that I know you've given to a lot of previous interviews and stuff. But when did, more independent punk and hardcore, that sort of stuff, how did it get introduced to you? Because correct me if I'm wrong, you're the oldest of the siblings, right?
Yeah. So the punk stuff kind of came in through the back door. I was really into rap, and I think that I really liked rap because it was when NWA was coming out, and they were just making MTV News all the time. And I knew that parents were in an uproar, so I was like, if parents hate it, then I'm gonna love it. I don't know what it's about, but It's from this magical place called Compton. I've never heard of it. It seems like it's just the wild, wild west out there, but everyone is cool. They look cool. They sound cool. So I'm going to go buy the tape and then, end up like NWA. Okay, so now I like NWA, and I start getting into rap more, and it's like EPMD. I remember like an EPMD, Rob Bass, like all these rappers,
Right.
Cypress Hill. And so then I get Attack of the Killer Bees, and I was like, well, okay, it's Public Enemy. I loved Public Enemy as well. And they were teaming up with this band called Anthrax that I had never heard of, but I was familiar with like some Hessians on the bus had like a Anthrax patch on, so I assumed they must be a metal band. But I was like, well, if they're cool with Public Enemy, and I loved Public Enemy, then I'm gonna love Anthrax, and I did. So then it was like, okay, now I'm into like this. Now I found thrash, Now here's Anthrax, and okay, that's Metallica, but I don't really love Metallica. What about something a little like more brutal? I was like, well, there's Pantera, so I started getting into Pantera, and then I started like backing off of the metal and getting more and more into like the punk and the hardcore. So, and that was like kind of finding stuff that was a little outside of the time. Like as I backed off of like Pantera, it was kind of more of Gorilla Biscuits, Minor Threat, things like that, which I know that the time for that had passed, but that was my introduction to it. I was like, if I'm going to start, I'm just going to start at the beginning, So I did.
Right.
I just asked some kids, like, hey, what do you recommend, like old hardcore, old punk? And Sex Pistols was always recommended, but I didn't like that. It was just a little too snotty for me. I was like, I kind of want it more fun, So Gorilla Biscuits was amazing. Dead Kennedys I loved. And then from there, it just kind of spread out, horizontally, and I was finding just more stuff that the major nodes of it were Rage Against the Machine for sure. When I found out about Rage Against the Machine, I was like, this is just my shit. This is like rap and the right kind of punk for me, because I knew of Inside Out, and Zach was from Inside Out. And I was like, this is like perfect. This is the punk vibe that I need. Plus, it's like rap. I was like, I don't need anything else. So I listened to Rage Against the Machine forever, and just kind of, I would find bands off of them. And then grunge, I got into grunge when that era started up. So,
right, that whole mixture. Yeah. Rage Against the Machine was huge for me as well. But like, I remember when I got into Rage and then, found out about Inside Out later, because obviously like that's, usually what happens when you're 12 or whatever. Right. But I remember my head being cracked open where it's like, wait, there was a band before Rage Against the Machine. Like it just didn't. Yeah. I was like, wait, what?
It's especially because you like. I remember when I found out that like a popular singer had fronted another band. It was like finding out that like a brain surgeon used to be a car mechanic. I'm like, wait a minute,
totally.
This is two totally different things. You can't do this, but this guy did this. And then it was just like,
right.
I just admire him so much.
Oh, I agree. And then you're just like, how is this even possible when you're, you make this EP as a child.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It still has resonance, some 20, 30 years later. It's so crazy.
It's still amazing. Yeah. He's a hero.
Yeah.
Man. Yeah, for sure.
And so what kind of kid did you find yourself being as you were, going to school, and like, did you care about school?
Yeah.
Did
you
play
I was very
sports?
studious. Yep. Very studious.
Okay.
I was just a people pleaser. Honestly, like, I really just wanted to make my parents happy with my grades. I wanted to make the jocks happy with my soccer playing, because that was the sport I played. I wanted to make, the musicians happy by joining band and stuff. I mean, I really just I liked all that stuff and I could do it. And I really didn't, I don't know. I just kind of floated around and just was friends with everybody. Like I said, I was more people pleasing than actually having an identity. But the music was what made me feel like, okay, I have an identity, I have a personality, and underneath all the soccer playing, and underneath all the instrument playing, and underneath all the reading, like I'm like a hardcore punk kid. That was the baseline of it all. But there was only 2 or 3 people in my school that really were into it. So. We would skateboard on the weekends and stuff, but I was never like, I don't know, I didn't drink or anything. I was straight up through high school, so it was never like compromising my grades for anything. That my grades always came first, for sure, which doesn't sound too cool, but I don't know.
No,
it helps.
Well, I do think there's this really interesting I guess, through line that I've seen for people's music. And I'm sure that you can attest to this as well, where it's like, when there is this application of like, okay, either I'm like into English or I've read a lot or whatever, like there's just certain elements that come through almost through osmosis with a person's lyric writing where you're just like, oh, like they're thinking about something a little bit deeper or they're articulating it. Like, you know, one of my, and I'm sure people have shared this with you many times, where it's like one of my favorite lyrics that you ever wrote was like, you know, I have a very expensive pen. And like, that just like, it just cuts right to it. It was like, I feel like, I was like, that was probably only written by a person who was like reading a lot of books and a book nerd.
Yeah.
Like, you just kind of see it.
Yeah. Exactly. That, you know, it was always kind of these like winks to intelligentsia of like, hey, if you get this reference or if you understand this word without having to, you know, look it up, then this song is for you, sort of thing, you know. But it wasn't very rewarding because, like I said, it was just a lot of head, not a lot of heart. But I mean, it was fun. It was really fun to put these songs together like puzzles and try to, you know, do something different than had ever been done before, you know, in that small scene. It just feels really wild. Sure. It just it feels crazy to because like, okay, I this might go off on a tangent, but my daughter is she's turning 8 next week, and she loves the emo aesthetic. And I don't know what exactly the emo aesthetic is, but I know that I was there when it started. Right. You know what I mean? It's like, totally. Yeah, like, oh, so you're gonna wear what, a Sunny Day Real Estate T-shirt, or like, you know, right? But she to her, it's something so different, and it's crazy to think that all this stuff that's like has just blown up in the mainstream fashion world and is now like on Target, you know, ads, just started from a little scene of punks and, you know, playing music in basements that we were literally on the forefront of. I mean, that's crazy to think that we were there like when so much of that stuff started. And it's going to be mind blowing to see what happens in the next like 5 years, let alone 10 years, where this stuff goes, because it's only going to get bigger. It's only going to encompass a greater swath of the demographic of kids. I mean, it's just going to be remarkable. So yeah, I just feel like to have been tuned into that stuff so early, I'm just so thankful for, because it really, really kind of just, it absolutely shaped my path like down to, you know, the precise razor thin line.
It's merch time, baby. You know that rockabilia.com is the place where you can visit their website, shop to your heart's content, and use the promo code 100 words or less, and that gets you 10% off of your entire order. What I love about this company, independently owned and operated, ships from the Midwest here in the United States of America, and they carry a wide variety of officially licensed merch. So, you know, you're looking for a Bring Me the Horizon shirt? Boom, no problem. How about Beatles? Got it. How about Eminem? Grateful Dead? The list can go on, and you will be able to find something for everybody on your list, whether it's a birthday, whether it's Valentine's Day, all of those things. It is, it's imperative that you give a gift. So why not go to rockabilia.com, use the promo code 100 words or less. It gets you 10% off your entire order. It is a win-win scenario. I win because you ordered and using the promo code and it shows marketing works. You win by getting rad pieces of merch. And then on top of it, you're supporting a cool, independently owned company. So thank you very much, Rockabilia, for your continued support, and order from them. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. You know what it's like when the new year happens. Everyone has all of these resolutions and things they're going to do. And then obviously like 3 weeks later, it's gone. And that is why I personally, every time we're talking about New Year's, new you, all that sort of stuff, you focus on the things that you can control, whether it's like, I'm going to make my bed every day, or like, I am going to, tackle this thing that seems insurmountable, but you just do it one step at a time. And then all of a sudden you're there. It's done. That is why I personally love therapy. It is a great way for you to interact with another person, find out your strengths and weaknesses, be able to talk through those weaknesses, and then hopefully have those things stick and then last throughout the rest of the year. Listen, I know that therapy may be daunting, but that is why I love working with BetterHelp, because they make it super simple. You do a very simple online survey and it connects you with an official licensed therapist, and it's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Like I said, all you do, fill out a brief questionnaire, and then if you are in the middle of sessions with a certain therapist and you're not vibing, you can switch, no problem whatsoever. Celebrate the progress that you have already made. Visit betterhelp.com/Ray today to get 10% off of your first month. That's betterhelp.com/Ray. Go enjoy your life.
I mean, you hit the nail on the head where it's like, it's so interesting to watch how these things have, permeated through culture. But it's like, I often reflect on that too, where it's like now this, scene, broadly speaking, has had time to permeate. When we got into it, it was, like 20, 30 years. And now it's like, 50 years. And like that gives you time to see different generations and how it affects them.
Yeah. We're going to, my wife and I saw, an old lady, old, like 70 or 80 with neck tattoos the other day. And we're like, whoa, we're going to start seeing that a lot.
Totally.
It's going to start happening. That's because that's us. That's our, those are our parents when we were getting into it. And, I know kids that got their parents into it and their parents were getting tattoos because they thought it was cool that their kids were doing it. You know what I mean? And so they kind of like bounced it back a generation before moving it forward. And it's like, wow, that's actually going to happen. And I have a guy that I went to shows with that was my roommate, when I was 17 years old, and his son is 27. I'm like, dude, what? This is fucking crazy. This is crazy. But I don't know, man. I'm just thankful to have been on the ground floor looking at it.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And, I know that as you were, going to Home of the Hits and dropping your $14 to buy your Gorilla Biscuit CDs and stuff like that. And I know that you play, you played in a terrible grudge cover band or whatever. My words, not yours. And it was like when you started to like get up on stage and obviously be in front of people, I know that you were not shy from that perspective. Like you felt comfortable enough to do it. Was there any, I guess, learning curve in that? Like once you started to play Every Time I Die shows and be like, oh yes, like, this is how you quote unquote command a room or whatever.
Oh man. It was just this insanely baseless overconfidence because I was so terrified, but it was just like, I can't go backwards. There's nothing to it but to do it. I just have to walk up on stage and do it, and try to project myself forward and imagine what people would say looking back on it. And it didn't keep me in the present as much as I would have liked it to have, to really feel the experiences. But if I could like psychically, like I said, like imagine what people would say next week about the Every Time I Die show that they saw right now, what would I want them to say? And it was like, as long as they don't say that I threw up and passed out, anything other than that,
right,
I'm good. And then so all of a sudden the pressure would come off. I'd be like, I just have to finish the show, And then I realized that like, oh, if I can make some, making people laugh was kind of a good way to just kill time in between tuning. And that just kind of, that really helped me out, was realizing that like, oh, these people kind of want to laugh sometimes. They just want to be entertained, and being entertained is it's a broad stroke, if they're laughing or they're crying or they're moshing or whatever, they just want to have a memorable time. So, telling stupid jokes and being self-deprecating definitely helped.
Right. And I think that especially, there were like, you guys definitely as a band, broadly speaking, you inspired a reaction. Like people either got you and they embraced you, or they were just like, dude, just total, like, egotistical idiots or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, and so I think because of that, like that is able to at least, hit on the core of why people create art in the first place.
And I knew, it really never struck me that it would be seen as egotistical, because I was not an egotistical person. And I think that maybe once the internet came around and I realized that was an opinion that was floating out there, I was like, oh, it hurt, because I was like, well, they don't know me. And I was like, it's absurd, because if they knew me, they would just realize how wrong that is. But unfortunately, they don't know me, and they're not going to be able to know me. So the only way to kind of convey that it's not that is by being self-deprecating, you know. So that became a huge defense mechanism to almost just annihilate the idea that anybody could call me a narcissist or egomaniac or anything, because it was a play. Like I didn't actually feel that way. I was putting that on. Of course I didn't believe I was like Scott Weiland. I was in a basement in front of 10 people. Like I'm not so delusional that I can act like, you know, a guy who plays arenas. Like the joke is that I'm just out of my mind thinking that it's bigger than it actually obviously is. So overlooking the obvious was, I thought, obvious, but it wasn't.
Right. Yeah, it's like, guys, you really aren't that cool. You're playing, you know, again to.
But I'll tell you what.
It's like, yeah.
There's a funny story though. One time in 2003, we went and we played in Virginia, I think it was, and 2 people showed up to the show. I'm not lying. Like 2, okay, maybe 3 people showed up to the show, and I was like, well, this. I'm like, this is a real lightly peppered crowd. I'm like, it's going to be embarrassing when, you know, you guys are the only ones that you could say you saw us when we're on Ozfest next year. And that was a joke, and I got the 3 people to laugh, because obviously we weren't going to get on Ozfest, but then we got on Ozfest, you know, so it actually worked out.
You're like, whoops.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to actually call that shot.
Right, exactly.
Because then it made it look like I was being egotistical, but I was trying to joke about the fact that we weren't going to ever do it, but then we ended up doing it. I was like, fuck, now they probably think I was serious.
Right. I know, like, as you were probably bringing this stuff home, and, you know, especially once you and your brother obviously played in the same band, like, how were your parents reacting to you being into this stuff that was ostensibly, you know, even though they were maybe, you know, progressive minded people as far as hippies were concerned, were they like, oh my God, what is Keith getting into? Like, this is so weird.
Yeah, a little bit of it. I just think because it was just so the antithesis of what I was going to school for, and I had just finished up my teaching degree, and I invested all this work into, I put all my eggs in one basket where I was going to go be an English teacher, and then I just like threw the fucking basket out the window. I was like, nah, I'm going to go on tour. You know, so there was like a, what? Like, you just did all of this stuff. And I was like, yeah, but it's not really what I want to do, you know? So they understood that. And then it was just, I don't know. Then it was never really talked about. That it was just kind of like, you know, I'd come home from tour and be like I was just coming home from a work shift, you know? It was, I think they liked it in the sense that it got them like some to meet some cool people, you know, during the journey. But it never really was a point of contention between us at all.
That's good. That's good. Yeah. Did you? I was actually going to ask about the teaching stuff. Did you actually ever step inside the classroom, like get your credential, or was that?
Okay. When I was at the University of Buffalo, they had this this program called the Teaching Education Institute, which was a master's program. So you had to have your bachelor's degree, then you could apply to be in this teaching program, and it was like on-site training. Like they'd put you in a class and you'd teach, and then they'd get you your teaching certificate. So I applied, and like, you know, I think 15 people get picked, and I was one of them, so it was cool. I got picked. I got to teach at my old high school, so I did that for half a semester, and then for the other half I taught at a different school. But then at the end of that, you know, I had all the credentials, and they're like, okay, here's a job. Do you want to go to Boston? And I was like, what? No, I don't go on tour. So that's where I left.
Right. Would you ever entertain the idea of being a teacher again?
Fuck no. Okay. No. Right. I've seen what classrooms are now. No.
Yeah, you're like not
good enough for the gun. I'm not good enough for the gun.
Right. It is interesting, and I'm sure you've encountered people, you know, on your tours and travels where it's like there is that pipeline of, you know, a hardcore punk kid turning into a teacher, or being a sub, like in between tours and stuff like that. Yeah. I do find that parallel interesting, because it is an element of entertaining.
Oh yeah,
you know,
totally.
You getting in front of a classroom.
Yep. When I was doing it, that's kind of like, you know, what I was relying on. I mean, it was very similar in a lot of respects, because we were playing shows at the same time, but we just hadn't really gone on our first big tour yet. But yeah, it was, you know, like, okay, I'm standing up in front of a classroom. I have to get these kids to relate to me. It's the same thing as standing on a stage in front of, except up here I don't have a band behind me. At least over there I have people making noise. In the classroom I'm by myself. It was a little more harrowing, but I loved it. I can't do it. The times have changed.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So as you started, like you mentioned, you kind of hitting the ground running relatively quickly with Every Time I Die, as far as going on tour and everything like that. How did you, I know this is probably like a loaded question in regards to the idea of how did you cope with the attention? As you started to be I remember the first time you guys came out west where it was people really care about this band already. And was it, I know it's an evolving process as you start to understand that, but was it exciting initially and then obviously morphed into something else?
It sounds strange, but attention embarrasses me. I really don't like being looked at. That's the band made sense because there's other people in the band, there's other people to look at, there's other distractions and things like that. But yeah, no, when we got off stage, it was just I just kind of wanted to just drink and hang out with one or two dudes and, then go to bed. It never really made sense to me. I didn't, because if it was always if you like me for this, then you don't know me and then I can't trust you. So I don't want to be around people I don't trust. So, that's all there is to it. And once the internet came around, it was even more of I can't subject myself to the opinions of people that I don't know and trust. It's so easy to just get cut down or get caught up in a lot of internet drama, and I didn't want any of that to happen to us. I had seen it happen to other bands, and it wasn't good. We had seen bands just get literally jumped after shows for some things that happened online. We heard about bands getting their stuff set on fire or stolen, and I was I just want to survive this, and if that means that I just have to go sit in a van and drink by myself, then so be it. So that was always
right.
But I was just always nice to people. I was never rude or disrespectful or anything. I just really had to tread cautiously, because I just had trust issues with everything.
Sure. Yeah, that idea, especially too, most people presume that if you're in a band, there is an element of, ego and celebrating yourself. But then there, like you said before, there is that connection of I'm kind of playing a version or a character of myself.
Yeah.
This isn't actually me.
Right.
And sometimes people can't separate those two.
Yeah. And it was so early on that I didn't even know what the real version was. I just knew that whatever they had just seen was not fully it, So, there were pieces here and there. But I didn't feel comfortable enough, carrying out any sort of role play. I wasn't LARPing after the show.
Right.
I just
Totally.
I just wanted to kind of be by myself where I didn't really have to prove anything to anybody.
Right. The idea of like you were mentioning, drinking a load of the van. When did you give up the edge, so to speak?
Senior prom.
Oh, I was about to say there's probably a good story usually attached to if a person actually claims straight edge, then there's usually is a fun story.
Yeah,
attached
I
to
claimed straight edge. I took acid at my senior prom.
Dude, that's pretty gnarly for the first.
It was awesome.
Yeah.
I went hard. Yeah. And then I went to college. I went to Virginia Tech, and straight edge till college. So I got there, and I don't know. I just fucked around with alcohol and really started. It wasn't a problem yet, though. Then I moved home and started the band, and that's when drinking became okay, I'm going to need to do this.
That's what it enabled you.
I'm going to need to do this all the time. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I got to use this thing called a coping mechanism.
Yeah. This is have you guys ever heard of escapism? It's really awesome. You don't have to accept anything.
But, right.
Yeah.
Live in a constant state of,
just fog.
That. Totally. And just that idea, anybody that's ever toured, it's a suspended state of animation.
Oh, yeah.
You're not actually living life.
No.
You're just
you're breezing through it. Yeah. You're just breezing through it. And you're not really, you're not learning the lessons that life has aligned for you. You're not gaining anything from your circumstances. You're not learning anything about yourself because you're not changing, because you're not facing anything, any flare up of anxiety and you're running back to the bottle. But that anxiety is there as like a warning sign to tell you like, hey, this is a part of you that you need to work on, and so when you don't know those things because the alcohol numbs it, then you just are in a state of arrested development for your entire life. So,
right.
Luckily I've been sober. It'll be 3 years this Christmas, which is cool. So.
Oh, hell yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. No, I knew that you were on the Sober King journey, as they say.
I'm back. And since there's no senior prom left, I have no chance of taking acid again.
No, man. Yeah. You can even reclaim the edge, which obviously some people would argue against, but it's okay.
No, I have too much respect for it to ever do that to it.
That's, I appreciate that. As a straight edge adult myself, I would obviously have to beat you up.
Hey, I get it. You'd have to set me on fire. I understand.
Our friends at evilgreed.net are here, and they want you to know you can order vinyl, shirts, sweatshirts, whatever it is you're looking for from a very specific point of view band. And that point of view band is something that I like to call, smart heavy stuff. So let me just give you a little rundown of the type of bands that they work with, whether it's Integrity, whether it's Gouge Away, whether it's Death Wish, Triple B, the list goes on and on. But like I said, it's got to fall under that heavy music genre and specifically something that is a little bit, artistic forward. But use this promo code, please. It is 100 words. It gets you 10% off your entire order. They ship it to you from Berlin, Germany, because that's where the company is based out of. But the shipping rates are very advantageous for us here in the States. So please take advantage while you can. Go to evilgreed.net, use the promo code 100 words, ships out to you, lickety split. I've ordered from them. I love the company. I've gotten my orders in like 7 to 10 days. It's incredible. So evilgreed.net, go mess around, order all the vinyl, order all the merch, and support the supportive.
Okay, round 2. Name something that's not boring.
A laundry? Ooh, a book club. Computer solitaire, huh?
Ah, sorry, we were looking for Chumba Casino. That's right, ChumbaCasino.com has over 100 casino-style games. Join today and play for free for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
Kind of along that same line, this is definitely something that has been embraced by other music scenes, and I think to an element of what was happening in the early 2000s to mid 2000s, where it was like that idea of I know like it's probably embarrassing for you to talk about, where it's like, oh, shittydudes.com was the website, and like there was that element like you're talking about of like you guys really leaning into this like character, and how do you just reflect on it like with that kind of like, oh man, like we were obviously just children, we had no idea what we're doing, like how does that kind of sit with you? Not asking you to like reckon.
No, it's fine. It made sense back then. It absolutely made sense back then. Because we felt shitty, but we didn't. We felt shitty because we were making ourselves feel shitty. It was this loop where people were telling us that we were shitty and giving us a wink and the nudge and showing us like these merch designs with our faces as all like fucked up older people, and it was all fun and it was all fun and games and it was great, and we did lean into it because personally I did, because I didn't know what I was other than a guy who liked to do shitty things, so I was like, well, this is perfect. I'm an animal by nature, so I'll lean into this, of course. But looking back, it did make sense. That was our very first kind of stage of evolution. We were these young little organisms that had animal mindsets that just wanted to eat and kill and do whatever, find whatever pleasure we could. But as we kind of evolved and grew into, higher organisms, we changed our likes and our dislikes. And, I got into spirituality, and I can't imagine ever starting a shittydude.com website again.
Totally.
I don't think it would, be as authentic as it used to be, but I think it's appropriate. I definitely do. I had earned that title. We had earned that title, and I'm just thankful that I personally was able to get out of it.
Right. Yeah. That this is not the the mantle that you've hung yourself.
No, not at all. Not at all.
No. And on that similar notion, the idea of like, touring, like we were talking about, like how was your response to touring as you first started to do it? And then, how it obviously evolved once it became like that, it consumed your 8 to 10 months out of the year.
Yeah, it was, at first it was the honeymoon phase for the first like 5 years. Everything was new. Everything was vivid and colorful and fun and kind. And, it was just this beautiful experience. Even the bad parts I loved, because I was like, oh my God, these are like experiences, and I, as a dude that had enjoyed, certain writers, squalor and poverty and alcoholism, those were like romanticized ideals for me, so when we're like, sleeping on people's floors and, drinking all night with a, dude with, I don't know, one leg or whatever. I'm like, these are the stories that I'm going to love to remember. I'm collecting these as we go, and this is great. Then eventually that stuff kind of got old, that country's only so big and you can only play, these cities so many times before you start recognizing the same people and knowing what to expect. And this is not to disparage anything. It's just, okay, well, now we know these venues. We've been here before. We know the promoters. We know the people that we're going to see. It's a different kind of cool. Now it's a more comfortable cool. Now not everything is fear-based. Not everything is so fast. Now everything is kind of like, good to see you, like old acquaintances, and that's nice. It's nice to feel like you have friends all over the place, and so that was a whole different sort of beauty. And then it got to the point where it's like, okay, now this is a fucking job, and I need to take it seriously. I need to protect my voice. I need to protect my reputation. I need to protect my future. It was all these things where it was like, I had too much to lose after a certain point, and it stopped being as fun. Off stage, the shows are still amazing, and it was the only thing I had looked forward to. But as touring went on, the window of beauty shrunk. It got shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter as the touring years went on, until it was only from when the show starts, from when we take the stage to when we leave the stage. And I hate everything after and before that, and that was unfortunate that it got to that point. But I don't know. I did all I could to try to get out of it, and some days are better than others. But yeah, it definitely went from, like I said, a honeymoon to a job.
Right. So like, it sounds like a different type of survival. Where it's like, instead of the instinctual survival, it's like now I have to really craft my entire day around making sure that like I literally get to next week without going crazy or doing real harm. Yeah,
exactly. And I hated the relationship that I had with time. Everything to me was like doors. What time are doors? Doors are at 6. Okay, well that's when my whole mentality has to shift. I have to go from, no matter what I'm doing, into entertaining, performing mode, whether that means I have to drink, half a bottle of whatever, or it means I have to do this or that, whatever. I knew that there was like a hard stop at 6 o'clock or whatever time doors were. And so, I would I started giving myself too much time to get to doors, and then I would cut into my day, and then I would stop doing things that I used to do, like taking walks, because, oh no, I can't, because what if I get lost and then I'm not going to make it back for doors, and then everyone's going to get mad at me. You know what I mean? So it was like, I developed this real awful relationship with time, where my schedule became so oppressive, and it was a self-imposed sort of bondage to it that I hated it. And I was always like, who would I be if I was just allowed to run at my own speed? Like, what is my speed? How fast do I walk when I'm not in a rush? Those sort of things. What do I like to do when I don't have to fucking do anything? And I just didn't know. And I asked myself those questions for fucking 10 years, and I was never able to find out. And it got really frustrating a lot of the times, but, I've since found out. So.
Right. No, it's amazing. That I really do like the concept of what you're talking about, where everybody's life is structured around time, but just like this real demarcation of like, okay, here's who I can be in like what I would call a normal life. And then here's who I am that I have to transform into this other thing. So I totally.
And then, so you're like, okay, so what? So before 6, am I myself? And then after 6, I'm somebody else. So can that not fluctuate here and there? Like, how do I know when to turn it on or turn it off? Like, when should I start drinking? When should I, how many energy drinks should I have? Should I smoke weed? It just became like this whole, it was just a really stressful way to be, where it was almost like this science experiment that I was running with my chemistry and my biology versus the universe and its time, its chronology.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And on that same topic, like pivoting the idea over to, I know you've obviously put out a couple of books, and like clearly writing has always been something that, has loomed large in your life, whether it's the lyrics or obviously putting pen to paper. When you actually put out a book, like, did that feel drastically different than, putting out a record, or was it kind of just like a similar-ish feeling?
It was like a similar-ish feeling, because if anything, it was worse, because I knew that when a record got put out, people would listen to it then, But when you put a book out, people might buy it right now, but they're not going to fucking read it until like next month when they have, time. So then you never know, like, hey, where's the feedback coming from? Like, do I ask this person what they thought of the book? Because if they haven't read it yet, then I'm going to make them uncomfortable, and I don't want to do that. But they haven't mentioned it, so that must mean they haven't gotten it. Well, why? What's wrong with me? And then it was just like a sort of thing where it's like, it just became, it really became insulting, I felt, to try to ask people to buy a book when they had known me for buying albums, and I didn't want to do that to them. You know what I mean? And that's just such a weird. It's such a like a weird remainder from all the people pleasing that I had done my whole life, where it's like, I'm gonna not write a book because I don't want to make you uncomfortable. And it's like, I don't want I don't want you to think that I'm like this guy, like, that I'm spinning all these plates, and whatever I do, you got to buy just because you like my band. Like, that's not true. If you don't like literature, then don't buy the book. It's okay. But yet, people who only like literature and don't like the band probably aren't going to hear about the book. So now I have to just entirely depend on this very small demographic of Every Time I Die fans. And those are the ones that might buy the book, but the ones that actually read it, now that's even smaller. And then how do I know what they think about it? I'm not going online and Googling myself. That's just that. I've never done that, and I never will do that. So I don't know. I don't know how the response to the book was. I could tell you this. I don't know how many copies it sold. I have no idea. It was just something I loved to do. And then when it was done, it just felt really like, that's it. Like,
that was that. All right.
Because you can't. Yeah, there's no tour to go on. I mean, I spoke at a few bookshops, and that's great. I do love doing that. But to compare it to the music, it's apples and oranges, and it was not a delicious apple at all. I'll tell you that.
Sure. Yeah. This is an apple that you're going to eat across 2 years.
Yeah, exactly. Very tiny bites. Yeah.
I want to hit on Many Eyes, obviously, because that's, ostensibly the reason why we're here.
Sure.
It seems like everything that has kind of happened to you post Every Time I Die, like, has just been, kind of like stuff that happens to you. Mm-hmm. Not saying that you're not manifesting these things or doing it, but like, because you're so concentrated on your fact that you want to be present for your daughter or your sobriety, and then like, people have to pull you in these directions where it's like, hey, Keith, have you thought about this? You're like, oh, no, I haven't.
Yeah.
And it sounds like that's obviously when Jamie Jostic, you always answer the phone when Jamie Jostic calls,
you
obviously.
Answer that phone.
Yeah, right. No matter what. It's like, 1 a.m, like, clearly it's a good idea that Jamie has.
Yeah.
And so would you, I guess, characterize that? Like, does that sound accurate as far as like things, happening to you where it's like, oh, wow, I didn't think that I really wanted to like be in a band until the idea presented itself.
That's yes, that's absolutely true. But I will say this, in when everything went down and I knew that it was the end, I was very excited because for the first time in my life, I was gonna find out what came to me, as opposed to what I had to go after. Because my entire life, I chased everything. I was like, I'm going to go after this guy, see if he's got an in with this. But, if I'm trying to put a book out, I got to go after. Tours, I got to go after. Let me talk to these people, go after. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to, not just sit back, but I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to put my energy into these things that don't reciprocate the energy necessarily. So I'm going to see what comes to me, and I want to see what sort of things, like you said, happen to me. So in the meantime, the best thing to do is just be a dad, and a sober one, because it's not really doing anything but existing in just a better state of being. But when he called, it very much felt like, oh, this is happening to, just like you said, it felt like, oh, this is happening to me. This is coming to me. So it must be something I have to take. That can be wrong, but it was very early on, and I thought that whatever is coming to me, I have to take, because it's like a sign from the universe. But some of those things you don't always need to take. But Jamie was, when he came to me and when he approached me about a band, yeah, exactly. I was like, whoa, I offered, I offered to the universe that I was going to sit back and not go after and wait to see what got kind of brought and delivered. But I didn't actually mean it would be like anything. Like, I didn't want to be in a band just yet. Like, I was really hoping there was going to be something else, something that I had never considered, because in my mind, I have all this time now. I have, clarity I've never had before. I was in a new relationship, so I had like a wonderful supportive relationship. I had a daughter that knew me. I was like, this is going to be amazing. I'm going to manifest something that I couldn't even dream of. And then, it's wah, 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 wah. Here it goes. Hey, you want to be in another hardcore band? I'm like, oh, no, what? But I was like, okay, you know what? This is it. This is, I love Jamie. I've loved Jamie. It felt right because he was like Hatebreed was one of the first hardcore bands I remember listening to. And so for it to come full circle like that, I felt like it was a good place to start. And I've always trusted him. I just knew he was on the strength, as they say.
Right. Well, and I just like the idea that it's like, there always is that idea that, your band breaks up, or you had like the death of one thing, like, okay, I got to get up on the horse and like do it again immediately. And, while there is that notion of, it's just like, clearly like what is happening, your brother's band and then like your band, like people are ostensibly always going to compare the two, but like you are taking this in a much, like, you're just like, oh yeah, I'm just doing this. And like, yeah, I'll play some shows, I'll tour, but like, this isn't the focal point of my life. Right. Like, this is just kind of something that I'm trying out and see where it goes.
Yeah. I do just, and the writing style is totally different. The lyric style is totally different. I mean, everything about this is different because I know what everything else is like. And I really like, now that I have, like I said, the clarity and a good support system, I really just want to try to see if different approaches work better, because every other approach I took while I was under the influence of something in one way or another, even if I wasn't directly drinking while writing or whatever, I was still a dry drunk. I was an alcoholic for a long time, but I'm not anymore. So I can trust my instinct a little better now. So yeah, the writing's different. Everything just feels different. It feels better to me, and it's moving slower. And that's just something I've never been used to. I've always been like energy drink guy, like I got to get up. I got to get up. I got to run errands. I got to fucking do this. I got to go do this. I got to do this. And now it's like, slowly get up. And like I said, I found out my speed. I found how slow I walk naturally when I'm not in a rush to get anywhere. And my whole life moves like that now. So the band is moving like that. And it just feels like it's letting it grow, letting it unfold at its own pace. It feels like it's actually coming into picture a lot more vividly,
Yeah. Well, and I'm sure too, like this could hit on the last question I was going to ask you, as far as like your relationship with the business of music. I mean, clearly you've been able to, make a living off of, playing in a hardcore band, which is like such a funny thing to say because like,
it's crazy.
at one point that was like never even,
Right.
thought of, in regards to how bands can operate. But like, how was your relationship with the business side of things? Like, obviously Once Every Time I Die started to hit, and you guys obviously had to have, a business manager, a manager, and like, did you always kind of keep that at arm's length, or did you enjoy aspects of it? What was your relationship with
I had just kind of claimed, again, plausible deniability of like, look, I don't need to know how all this shit works. This is a punk rock hardcore band. We've always been that. We didn't have a manager at the beginning. If there is a manager now, that's fine. I don't need to know what he does. I don't need to know how much we pay him. I don't care. Like, I'm assuming we have a team so that I don't have to think about how much we pay a team, like I don't want, right. Shit. I don't care about that. I just want to try to be as present as possible and put on a good show. But that was really stupid, to be honest. I mean, it was really stupid of me. And I know that I made a lot of mistakes in just letting things unfold and putting trust in people that hadn't earned it. So now I'm really cautious about where my energy goes. And I definitely only surround myself with very positive, loving people. And it's my relationship with the industry as a whole has been marred, but I do feel like this will be a nice way to get back into the calmer waters of it and remind myself that it's not all terrible.
Right. No, it's not all terrible.
No,
I mean, like, a portion of it is always going to be terrible, but you can avoid.
I'm just not business minded, and it's like I cringe when I have to have talks about money. I get all tense, and I'm like, this is just not for me. Like, can anyone please speak the language that I don't speak? But I had to really just face it and learn to speak the language. And like, as much as I hate it, like I said, those places where you think are the most anxious, that's where you have to go, because that's where the lesson is. So I had to really adapt to a new band and learn how to like, okay, I'm going to do this right from the beginning this time, and not just wait until I make a bunch of mistakes and then fix them later on. Like, no, I'm going to do this all right from the beginning.
Right. And that you're still like making mistakes right now as well.
Absolutely.
Like, yeah.
I mean, I said dead
You just
guy.
make less of it.
I said dead guy. Yeah. I meant to say drowning man. I'm still making mistakes. I'm human.
Dude, and that's exactly. And that's why we have friends that can, tell us irrelevant facts about bands, and like we should be like, oh yeah, it's fine. Yeah, I know what you're talking about, but I just want to Yeah, because that's the thing. I want to make sure that the audience knows.
Exactly. Yeah, and you know what? People are a lot more forgiving than you'd expect. I have discovered that people are a lot more forgiving.
Yeah, and especially too, like when you have put yourself out there and you have put your art out there, whether it's books, movies, any piece of media, as it were. It's like there are people that will. Like, yes, of course, there's always, drama that exists, like you mentioned, on the internet, and people are going to, cast aspersions one way or another on whatever a person's putting out there. But to your point, when you are kind of just like, I'm just doing the work here.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just putting this out here. You don't have to follow it. That's totally fine.
Exactly. Yep.
Well, Keith, I really appreciate you hanging out on this beautiful Friday. But thanks. It was nice catching up, and thank you for doing this.
Thank you very much, man. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me.
There you have it. That was Keith, and what a thoughtful dude, right? I just really am an admirer of his lyrics, an admirer of all the stuff that he's put out there, including Many Eyes. I think you, if you haven't listened to it, you let this conversation push you in that general direction. There's a link in the show notes. You can check it out and check him out on tour with Thursday and Rival Schools. Thank you very much to Keith for obviously doing this, and his publicist, Stephanie, for hooking this idea up. Let's talk about what's happening next week. I have Chris Norris from Combat Wounded Veteran. He's also known as Stake Mountain in the art worlds, and he's a very prolific designer. And he's done a lot of cool stuff. So him and I started corresponding on Instagram, and I was like, you know what, Chris, how about you come on the show? So that's what we got next week. Until then, please be safe, everybody. The show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Trust me in saying that no matter who you are, mental health challenges can affect you, and how you manage them can make all of the difference. That's why everyone should have access to mental health support that meets them where they are and helps them get through. BetterHelp provides online therapy on your schedule. It's flexible, simple to use, and more affordable than in-person therapy. Connect with a licensed therapist selected just for you. Learn more at betterhelp.com. That's betterhelp.com.
Hey, it's Malcolm Gladwell, host of Revisionist History. eBay Motors is here for the ride. Your elbow grease, fresh installs, and a whole lot of love transformed 100,000 miles and a body full of rust into a drive entirely its own. Brake kits, LED headlights, whatever you need, eBay Motors has it. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, it's guaranteed to fit your ride the first time, every time, or your money back. Plus, at these prices, you're burning rubber, not cash. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply.
Bring home Napoleon.
Destiny has brought me here.
The action epic from acclaimed director Ridley Scott.
What is your name?
Napoleon. You are the greatest leader in the history of the world.
Witness the rise.
You are nothing without me.
Of the legend. Starring Academy Award winner Joaquin Phoenix and Vanessa Kirby.
I'm the first to admit when I make a mistake. I simply never do.
Napoleon. Buy or rent on digital now. Rated R.